And hello and welcome, Jaclyn. I am so excited to have you on the podcast. And before we go into anything, I'm just going to share a little bit about Jaclyn, what she does, because there's a lot of really good stuff. So, Jack is a wildly passionate soulpreneur and a manifesting a queen, and she's one of the baddest duo behind For the Wild Femme. And I hope that I pronounced this correctly. Jack, please let me know if I do, if I don't. Yay,
Yeah, yeah.
awesome. And you are known for sharing your truth in your real approach to life and to business. And Jack, you're also a human design expert, and you give female leaders advice to step into their energetic alignment, into creating massive breakthroughs in their life and businesses. And you really have this unapologetic approach about you as well that I so love. And like, it's so open and honest and authentic, like just like our introduction, because we haven't spoken in person before. Well, over a video. It's not really in person, but it's over video. And it, like, we had such an amazing start. It was so open. It was just beautiful. Yeah. So we
Yeah,
going to
it's
talk
so fun
about.
to be on video. I haven't done a. Oh, I think we have a little delay. I say it's fun. I haven't done a podcast on video before, so I'm like super
Yeah.
stoked to be here and dive in.
Awesome. Yeah, because my Facebook group Energy Masters, they're gonna get a little sneak peek of the video episode actually before I actually put it out on kind of like the audio podcast. But one thing that I wanted to say before we dive right into the conversation is that Jack also has her own podcast, which is the Spiritual Smackdown podcast. So you can go find her there, and also via For the Wild Femme, if you want to dive deeper into Jack's work, which is amazing. She's got really amazing energy. And yeah, let's dive right in, because I feel like we've connected in a kind of like a different group somewhere, and it was just beautiful because I think our energies connected, and we had some chats on Facebook. So
Yeah.
yeah, Jack, let us know what you're doing and what is rocking your boat, and like the magic that you're spreading.
Oh my gosh. Yes, when you said like there's a lot that is happening in my world, there definitely is. So Fem is my main platform. So Fem is my business. I have a business partner who is also so badass. Her and I are business partners, best friends, soul sisters. We've really been on this path of growth and stepping into our full potential and leadership. We've been on this path together, and getting to do business with somebody that's just like there every step of the way is incredible. I mean, we definitely have, it's incredible. Like our coaches, like you guys are like the most, like she's a Manny Jen and I'm her projector. She's like, you guys are the most dynamic like duo, but also we're best friends too. So there's oftentimes that there's hard conversations, it's a lot of fun, but also a lot of like, we lead ourselves through a lot of real shit. And then we share it with the world. We share it through the world through our personal journeys. So we do the Spiritual Smackdown podcast together. And my like soul's calling is definitely just to share, like just to like share, to be a truth teller, to be real, to be, authentic as I can be, because I truly believe that when we share our truths, even though other people's truths aren't the exact same, everyone gets to tap into your journey. They get to like see a piece of your story, feel it in their own story. And the title, like Spiritual Smackdown, basically Rob and I, really dove into this realm of manifesting and surrendering and all of the personal development we've done when we both hit like a rock bottom. And while our stories look very different, there's also so many similarities of like what actually came out of it, the healing that we went through, the lessons, and really led to where we are today because we chose to dive in and do the work. We chose to rise. We chose not to play the victim. And this is a big piece of what I love to share and talk about and teach about. I'm currently writing a book, and it's all about the journey from victim to goddess. And really like, recognizing that we have a choice in the next step, in the next chapter of our lives.
Beautiful. So exciting to hear about your book as well. And you know, when we chatted, you also mentioned like you're someone you really love to lean into the fears. And you know,
Mhm.
that is something that it's not done so easily, right? Because we're so conditioned to kind of like lean away from the fears and to have this kind of like knee-jerk reaction and to withdraw from it and kind of like to suppress it and stuff it down. And as we've talked before, like we've really dove in deep into this art of surrendering and allowing and letting go and all of these kind of beautiful things. So tell us a little bit more about your backstory there, or anything that you would like to share about this part of your journey.
Yeah, well, I think that, I mean, so many of us are raised and so many of us are conditioned really in the like masculine energy, really in the idea of like we go to our mind to make decisions. We're thinking things through, we're thinking logically about things, we're told to rationalize and analyze versus like following our own intuition. And with my understanding of human design and tapping into that world, like our intuition speaks in different ways. For some people that's like this gut instinct, for some people it's this inner knowing, for some it's these nudges we get from the universe. And I really believe that we can use fear as this driver, and it's like our intuition speaking to us, and I call it the feel good fear. When you feel that feel good fear come up, it's like your key hands with it. When you walk with that, unlocks the desire realm where all like literally every like that's the realm of potentiality. Everything is possible there. But oftentimes what happens is fear comes in and we go to our mind and we're like, oh, bad, that's not for me. Oh, that's going to require me to get out of my comfort zone. What if I fail? What if this hurts? And so we stop our growth and we stop moving forward and we like limit ourselves because we're not willing to move beyond our fear. And as soon as we step into that fear, it like literally unlocks something like in that moment, and it keeps every step we take, it unlocks and unlocks and unlocks.
So beautiful. I
So
absolutely love
beautiful.
that.
I absolutely love that.
I think we have a
And
little bit
I
of
think
feedback. Can you hear the feedback as well?
I can't hear the feedback. We have a tiny delay, but I can't hear anything
Oh,
else
okay,
noise
there's a bit
wise.
of feedback on my end, but now it seems to be gone. Might be the internet connection, but it is so beautiful because, you know, when we get to experience this, especially in business, like I feel business is kind of like one of the biggest growth accelerators, kind of like, but not necessarily just in success and all of these things, but actually personal growth accelerator, because it brings forward all of these fears. So do you probably work in business with your clients as well, releasing those fears and working with the energy of them?
Yeah, so through Robin and I, so we have FEM, which is our brand together. We lead leaders and business coach. It's all business coaching, and then through my personal brand, I do a lot more of. It's not all business. It's a lot more soul work. It's a lot of
Mm.
healing. It's a lot of tapping into things like forgiveness, surrender, like letting go, and my like what it's interesting when you say like, oh, this all comes up in business. So my experience was that all of my lessons came through during what I call my spiritual smackdown. And I mean, obviously I'm still learning and still growing, but I had like 8 months of the spiritual smackdown. The very short version of it, I was 3 months pregnant with my second child. And when my husband like moved out of the house, moved in with another woman for 8 months, I was like growing a human in the smackdown. Like my life got turned upside down. I was completely blindsided, but was like, okay, this is where I would normally like step into victim mindset here.
Mm.
And I just had this inner knowing that this was like meant to serve me, that I was meant to grow from this, that I was going to come out on the other side like a totally different woman if I dove into my own soul, if I dove into my own healing and my own work. And so I did. I spent 8 months like, well, my daughter, while I was like growing a human inside me, like doing this like crazy deep dive where I had to like surrender and have faith like beyond the things that I ever thought I could surrender. And I mean, if you want to hear that whole story, it's in Victim to Goddess episode in the Spiritual Smackdown podcast. I won't give you the whole details of it. But the interesting thing is I like the lessons that came through for me there, which was all around like yeah, stepping out of victim mindset,
Mm.
recognizing the power to choose, looking at things from a different perspective, forgiveness, trust, faith, surrender, all the things that like these are all now themes. When I remember the moment actually when I was like running my business and I thought, wow, if I applied all of these lessons that I learned in my personal life into my business, if I could learn how to surrender in my business, if I could learn how to bring the feminine energy into my business, which I had been operating my business in masculine, in this like drive,
Hmm.
force, hustle, has
Yeah.
to happen, shoulds, expectations. There was no co-creating with the universe. It was very much like, I have to make it happen. I have to do it. Um, when I had that like light bulb moment is of like, what if I just surrendered? What if I trusted? What if I allowed? What if I made like my spiritual practice, my meditations just as important as sending the emails?
Mm.
What would that look like in my business? And when I did, when I tapped into feminine energy in my business, it changed everything.
Yeah. So amazing. Because really, it is this kind of like this big addiction, this big conditioning that we have towards the masculine. And the masculine isn't bad at all. But the thing is that most of the time we are in the lower masculine, anyways, when we are in the masculine energy. It's not that we're in bad masculine energy, but we're kind of like in the lower, in the also victimized, in the wounded masculine energy. And then we try to push and force from there. And I had
Yeah,
some,
and I don't.
no, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and I don't think the masculine energy is like bad at all, but it is if it's the only energy, if it's
Yeah.
the thing
Yeah.
driving all the time. If it's in the driver's seat and that's like it, no one else is in the car, you know? That's when like, no, that leads to burnout. That leads to connected in your business. That leads to like getting stuck in this like cycle where it doesn't feel good, where you're not lit up by your work, where you um, are afraid to take those bigger leaps, where you are afraid to step into fear because there is nothing like backing it. There is no trust there. There is that like, I mean, surrender is such a huge, huge piece. And when you can learn to surrender within your business,
Mm.
it's wildly incredible. Is your audience mostly like business or soul or combo?
I guess it's a little bit of everything. I would say it is quite a lot kind of like energy, psychic, intuition based, but then also kind of like I
Mm-hmm.
have people who are kind of like in that field, but also within kind of like just personal development or just healing. So I think it's kind of like a beautiful eclectic mix because I'm like myself, I'm interested in so many different things as a Manu Jen, which now finally I've allowed myself to do. Yay! And
Well,
not having to.
I love when we don't feel like we have to compartmentalize, like, oh, this is my business self, this
Yeah.
is my like spiritual stuff. Like, I think it's all so deeply intertwined, anyways.
Mm.
But it's just really interesting, like when you're like, okay, like maybe it's the opposite. Maybe you learn your lessons in business. You're like, okay, what if I apply this in my personal life? Like, we're here to grow and evolve and expand as humans. And yeah, I just think like the more women that are like bringing together, like rising together, bringing this like collective energy, having these conversations is so powerful.
Absolutely, absolutely. And for that, I so love to bring all of the different aspects in because I started out as a health coach and a kind of like health being longevity coach. And then I was really pulled into the more kind of like energy, psychic, intuitive side. And then that led to more kind of like business related stuff as well. So now I literally kind of like mix it all up and fuse it as, you know, as I see fit when I kind of like need it. But the beautiful thing that you said there as well about like the surrendering and really letting the feminine come in is because I found that when we do that, we really get into that flow state, right? Because, you know, we have all of these beautiful biohackers and they all talk about the flow state and all of these beautiful terms, but it's literally just the flow that you get automatically into when you let go, when you surrender, when you are in that surrendered allowing state. And that is just so
Mm-hmm.
beautiful, and it works both in the business but also in personal life, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, because for me, like business is 1000% energy.
Yeah.
Like if you're energetically aligned, then you can bring in the strategy that's energetically aligned. But if you try to go strategy first, if you try to put the strategy in place and then get your energy behind it, like it doesn't work that way. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
it's like people can feel your energy. Like when I teach on selling, it's all based on like, okay, like you have to get in that energetic vibration first. But I think the beautiful thing, like when you're talking about surrender for me, and this is what I dive into, whether it's with business clients or soul clients, is surrenders when you really let go of any attachment to the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
When you choose that you're going to have faith beyond the outcome. Because oftentimes what happens with people, they're like, I've surrendered, and it's like the surface level surrender. It's like I've surrendered, or I'm like trusting and I'm having faith as long as X happens, or
Yeah.
as long
Yeah.
as this happens by a certain date. That's not true surrender. That's like you still trying to control. That's still you giving the universe your agenda, giving the universe like your timeline. Surrender is when you are like just deeply in the state of trusting like that this is happening for you, not to you, that there is like a higher power at work, that there is something beyond this that's meant to serve you. And for me, this moment really came through. So I had thought I was surrendering when I was in my smackdown with my husband. And I mean, it was like tidal wave after tidal wave of like shit happening. And but I also always had like this intuitive knowing. I just always had this knowing that the pieces of our story and our journey wasn't over yet. And even through all the tidal waves, I like just like held on to that. It allowed me to really like in the moments where like so much anger was bubbling up, it allowed me to ask myself like, what do I want most right now? I want peace. Okay, so if I want peace, like how do I respond here? How do I respond versus react? If I want peace, would I rather be right or would I rather be happy? So I kept going through all these motions, but at the end of it, I was like, okay, I'm surrendered to whatever will be. But I was like, and he has to be like to work without me move back home before our daughter's born, or there's no chance. So that's not, see where I'm like, that's not true surrender, because then the universe is like, okay, she's giving us this timeline. She's showing where her limit is. Like she's showing us that she's like willing to love unconditionally unless it goes beyond her timeline of when she desires to love unconditionally till.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or she's willing to forgive until it's past this point that she's determined. That's not surrender.
Mm.
And so for me, when the magic really happened and when I was able to fully understand how the universe works is when my daughter was born. Everything came to place like exactly as I imagined it. I was like, oh my gosh, I should be so grateful because my husband moved back home on the time she was born. This is what I told the universe I desired. Like I manifested this, all the things. But I didn't do any of this healing work. I was like in this zone where I was like, yep, now I got what I want. Then it all fell apart 3 weeks later. And 3 weeks later is when I truly learned the power of surrender, where I truly was just like, now I'm willing to let go of control. Now I'm willing to let go of the outcome. Now I'm willing to not be in that driver's seat. And when I did that, again, there was like another really rough road ahead for us. But all of a sudden, I felt like I took my power back. Things were no longer happening to me. This wasn't like, this test from the universe. I wasn't in victim. I got my power back because I got my power back recognizing that like, I didn't have to control, which sounds like she got her power back by letting go. That's truly it. I got my power back by having faith.
So amazing. You gave me goosebumps there, seriously. And, like, first of all, it's such a moving story. And yeah, it's understanding this on such a deep level. It really makes a big difference. I had a conversation with a colleague, a good friend colleague this morning, and we've been diving in, maybe a little bit like you and what's her name, Robin, right? Like as this kind of like spiritual growth team. And we've done a lot of these kind of like letting go of control and all that kind of stuff. And really this morning it dawned upon me that there are so many stages to letting go, and one of the last or ultimate stages is really also letting go of needing the universe to fix it. Because when we are on the law of attraction and manifesting and all of these beautiful teachings, which obviously are true and correct, but then sometimes there's this little end thing, and you kind of like mention it there in your personal story with all of this beautiful emotional stuff around as well, which is like at the end we kind of like, we still want that outcome, right? Like, yeah, we do, like now we're allowing ourselves to do the work, but we still want that outcome, right? And then it's kind of like the universe who is kind of like it's the next step to for the universe to deliver us to, you know, deliver that manifestation to us. But can we actually let go of needing or desiring the universe to give that to us exactly as we think it should be? Or can we just let that go as well and really release that wanting, needing, desiring, insisting on the universe to bring it to us?
Well, and I think it's that like detachment. And I think that it's a very different energy versus needing and even wanting play on a very different frequency and energy
Mm-hmm.
than desiring. Desire to me is this like potential realm. Like when you can tap into the desire realm, to me, that's a very beautiful place
The
to be in
inspiration
because there
side, it
anything,
isn't. Yeah. Yeah.
because anything's possible there. When it's a need, I mean, it's just not on that same frequency. And
Mm-hmm.
even when it's a want, so this is a big thing. I think oftentimes, you know, in vision boards and manifesting, it's like, I want, I want, I want. I want is actually like based in lack
Yeah.
because I want means you don't have.
Mm-hmm.
Desire is a different energy.
Yeah.
Like there's a very, and I teach on this a lot, and people are like, well, is it just like the difference in the power of the word? It's it's the word, but it's literally the feeling that it brings
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Because I want also triggers I don't have. I want triggers lack. I want triggers this is not enough. I am not enough. Desire just taps into like freaking potential beyond your wildest dreams. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's when we tap into that with surrender, that we're like, I don't have to have this all figured out. I don't have to like make a chess move. I literally sent my husband a message the other night and it was like I was like, repeat after me, like universe blow my fucking mind. And it was just like we give room for this like play and this potential, you know?
Yeah, so beautiful. And I really feel it is that very fine balance on how we kind of associate with the word of like desiring or wanting, because it's exactly as you said, like they have so much different energy. And a lot of people stumble across that because yes, we are there to, you know, we're meant to desire, we're meant to have this inspiration. But it's more kind of like the love of already having it, you know, as in desiring the love of already having it, that kind of like feel. And then on the other side, it's the want, the insisting, the neediness, the craving, all of that kind of stuff, the longing. So I think this is really that where most people kind of like stumble. And I did for a very long time as well, until I really was deep diving into this whole topic. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
right there with you.
And and don't get me wrong, like I'm literally halfway through teaching a course right now called Manifest That Shit. So I know the power of manifesting.
Mm.
But part of what I teach is the surrender in your manifestations, is the like idea of this or something better. Because my truth is I could never have imagined where my life is at today.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't have even dreamt this. I would have never thought that um, I would have moved across the country to this like mountain town with, you know, my husband and our two kids. I would have never have imagined I was writing a book. Literally before this time, I was like, an Instagram post was hard for me to write. I was always like, I can't write. I can't even write a freaking blog post.
Wow.
Now I'm writing a book. I was working in network marketing at the time of my spiritual sprint. And like, I had no idea to like lead women in, you know, soul and business and start a freaking podcast, but I was willing to just allow myself to be led. I was willing to keep stepping into that bigger arena. I was willing to keep stepping beyond my fear. And in that place of surrender for me, this is again tapping back into that intuition. I just had this like very clear, intuitive inner knowing. If I was like, okay, if I'm not the victim here, if this isn't happening to me, if this is happening for me, like, what's the purpose? What's the purpose? What's the lesson here? What's next? What comes on the other side of all this pain and heartache and everything I've been moving through and all the like deep wounds and healing that I brought to the surface? Like, what's this all for? And I could tell you like the moment, like where I was sitting, and I was like, that I was meant to share my story,
Mm.
that I was meant to share my story to help other women on their path, and that I was meant to write a book about it. And even 2 months later, when my husband and I were reconciling, it was like I got into this place where I had just said, like, I know this is my purpose now.
Mm.
And I was like, are you going to be okay with me writing a book? Because basically, if you're not okay, like, we're probably not going to work. because this is like in my soul now and it needs to come out. It needs to live somewhere. I know my purpose in life is to lead and help other women. So if you're not comfortable with me sharing, like, sorry.
Yeah.
And obviously that wasn't his response. Like his response was, he was actually like, he's my biggest supporter in sharing like the day we launched our podcast, and I shared the story and writing my book. So it's amazing, but I would have never dreamt that. I would have never like thought I'd be so excited to write. Like I get up freaking right now, like at some ungodly time in the dark, and write, you know? So like we don't know what lies ahead for us all the time. And this is a big thing. I think sometimes, well, I know this is a big thing in all of my coaching, whether it's business clients or soul clients, everyone wants to know the how. Everyone's like, but
I
how?
was just gonna
Just
get into this. Yeah.
And I'm like, the how is your biggest cock blocker. Your how is what stops you in your tracks. And I think that we've been taught for so long is if you have this goal, you need to, you know, follow the, like, just like hit these mile markers. And if you have all these mile markers, you know, you're going to hit this goal and it's going to be amazing. What happens is I often work with people that do that and they're here and they're not amazed. They're not fulfilled. And they're like, look at, I hit all these mile markers. I like got the things that I dreamed of, and I'm not like, I'm still not fulfilled.
Yeah.
And I truly believe it's because you kept following this predictable. You kept following the how. You kept like having it all figured out.
Yeah.
And I think this is like the paved road, and it's like there, and you can go there. So yeah, and there's this other choice of this road that's like, it's a dirt road and it's windy and you have no idea what lies around the corner until you just keep taking one step forward, till you keep getting brave, till you keep stepping into that fear, till you keep stepping out of your comfort zone. And what happens is you just keep doing this, and all of a sudden you're here and you're like, holy wild F, like you're looking back being like, how did I get here?
Yeah, it didn't.
And then it doesn't matter because you're there.
Right?
Like, I don't even care how what?
It didn't make any sense to take these steps like on a strategizing or on a mind level, on a rational level, but you still did it anyways. And then look where it got you. And like I was exactly going to start with like, let's talk about the how to, right? Because that's this big stumbling block. And do you feel as well that when you really are tapped in and tuned in and surrendered, like truly surrendered, it is almost like the mind stops in its own way, at least to a degree, and it's almost like the universe moves you into your next steps. It's like you don't have to figure it out. There's no figuring it out. It is like literally the universe moves you into these next steps, and you don't even have to rationally acknowledge that.
Well, like I mentioned before, like I believe everyone, and women especially, have like intuitive gifts. Like they have their own intuition. They like have the inner knowing. For some people it's just got masked. For some people it's really hard to hear because of how, you know, life is, how we were raised, all of the things. When we're in surrender, we just like, that intuition becomes more clear.
Yeah.
We hear it. And when we're willing, and this is what comes back to the fear, and then when we're willing to not only hear it, because oftentimes people hear it and they're like, but I don't want to do that. Or that's scary. Or there's the fear. So then they jump up to their mind and they rationalize and they analyze and they make the pros and cons list, and they're like, okay, now I don't have to do it because I've like been able to talk myself out of it. My mind thinks it's a bad idea, so I'm not going to do it. Even though I keep getting these like intuitive nudges. And this is where the spiritual smackdown comes in. When you keep getting the nudges, when you keep hearing those whispers and you ignore it, for me, it was like the universe was like, womp, yeah. Like, let's wake her up because we keep nudging and she keeps not taking the bait. And so this is why like a lot of my work comes back to these fears, because we've just been conditioned to move to the mind. The beauty of human design is that it literally gives you the tool of how you're designed to make decisions that allow you to bypass the mind. And this is a huge thing. When you can stop making decisions with your mind, so much unravels for you.
So good.
So much unravels, because all of a sudden you're doing what your soul is here to do, what your soul is calling you to do. not what the world is, not what your parents are, not what your spouse or your friends or your siblings, like you're not doing things based on other people's expectations, based on, the shoulds, based on, well, she did this in her business and she's wildly successful. So if I just do the exact same thing, I'm going to be wildly successful. Well, guess what? She doesn't have the same energetic wiring as you. She doesn't have the same like desires in her soul as you. So it doesn't work that way.
Yeah. Absolutely. I so love that you confirm that and validate that and really kind of like have your own life examples for that as well. I was just kind of like 2 years ago, I started to work extensively kind of like with psychic readings and with intuition and all of that kind of stuff. And I had a lot of people come to me and they wanted to learn how to speak with guides and use their intuition and all that kind of stuff. But again, it was all about the how to. And now with all of that kind of like backing, I'm able to teach intuition and even psychic abilities from this whole different angle, because people don't have to know how to figure it out. People can just surrender and tap into their intuition, quiet their mind, and then it comes through. And that is like what you said, you have to have the faith and the trust and be able to follow that steps. But when you're really in that flow state, in that release, surrendered state, it kind of like it moves you into it anyways, unless you obviously want to go, as you said, the exact opposite way, and then the smack comes.
And it becomes easier, right? Like people are like, oh, how do you surrender and how and blah blah blah. And it's like once you, and because it's scary, right? It's scary to not have it figured out. It's scary to not know the how. It becomes to like tap into that energy, to have that faith, to surrender like beyond what you think you're capable of right now. When you do, and you like all of a sudden you see the magic of the universe and you see the beauty and you see, this for me, I'm like, when you can anchor into those moments, and so many of us that have them and we just don't even realize it. So even if you like look back and you're like, oh yeah, how did the universe show up with me? Like where was like stepping into my fear? Like how did that serve me? What have I manifested when I let go of the driver's wheel?
Yeah,
And so
it's
every
really
time, like, like every time that, and I think some people are just like, oh, it was coincidence, or it's like this, like, no, what if you just like trusted, like that was like the answer to your prayers?
And you feel it
Like
as well when that happens, don't you? You really feel it when something like that happened and you followed your intuition and it did work out. There's this gut feeling, or this, I don't know, some kind of feeling that it is because of that. Like even if other people could say, oh, it was just coincidence or whatnot, but inside of yourself, you have that phase, it was because you felt like that. And it's kind of like it's replicable, it's repeatable. You can replicate.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Once you're like tapped into that energy, and I literally got this message from my mom the other day. We had a family friend whose sister had got diagnosed with a tumor, and it was cancer. And when they went to operate, there was no cancer.
Wow.
And so what happens is people are like, oh, the doctors like made a mistake. And I'm like, or your prayers got answered, or it was a miracle because you've been like putting this energy out to heal. So you know what I mean? Like jump into like a reason why this happens. Like it was a coincidence, it was somebody's mistake, it's what, or the universe, God, angels, whatever it is you believe, is over here waving, like being like, hello, like
yes,
this is what you asked for. This is like the power that you have.
exactly. So beautiful. One thing that I also wanted to kind of like dive in with you a little bit is something that struck me immediately with you. Like you're so beautiful, raw and authentic and open and honest. And because especially in this industry, people really long to express themselves unapologetically and really openly, but still there's so many shoulds and so many barriers to actually really truly expressing themselves as they are. So kind of like, how is your approach? What kind of like, what's your jam in this area?
Literally, there's like nothing off the table for me. I truly believe if it's an experience I've been through, if it's like a thought that comes in my head, if it's something that comes through me when I'm meditating, like it's not just meant for me. My book that I'm writing, a lot of my book is literally my personal journals. And I have a creative director, and I was like giving him my journals, and he was like, oh my gosh, I don't even know if I can read your journals. And I was like, well, I share them online all the time. I like share my riffs online. Like I truly feel like, yeah, being real is, I just like when people ask me, they're like, is it okay that I ask you this? Is this like off the table? I'm like, you can literally ask me anything. I'm an open book. I talk about all of it. Which obviously like in the spiritual smackdown is like where you like, we talk about all of it. We just do. We lay our hearts out on the table. We tell the truth, even when it's hard, even when people are going to disagree with us. We share our truth from our own experiences, from our own perspectives. And I mean, this could go into a whole other topic, but just like when you let go also, again, of just like giving a shit what other people think about you. Like when you don't care. I'm like, basically what I tell myself, if I'm like, ooh, people are going to judge me for this, I'm like, well, one, people are going to judge me either way, so is it worth it? And I always literally just think, if anything like comes up for me, like in that fear base, in this like judgment base, I'm like, what if this helps one person today? Am I willing to face the rejection, the fear, the judgment, if the message that I share today, that came through my soul, that came through my heart, that I wrote down on a piece of paper, that came out of my mouth, what if I share this thing today and it impacts one person, just one person, not the whole internet, not 10 people, not my whole Facebook community, one person, is it worth it for me? And I always come back to the answer, yes.
Brilliant. It's so, so, so good. And I feel like when we surrender into that, it is almost like we're tapping into that oneness feeling, not as a concept, but really as living it. You know, of course, yeah, we're still separate in 3D. Of course, there might be backlash. Of course, there might be people criticizing or judging or not saying anything at all or whatnot. But they're still like, you're still the wave from in the ocean, and you know, you're connected to everything literally. And
Well, that's what I think of when I think of that one person. I'm like, and then think of the ripple effect. Like, what if that one person does something brave and impacts one person? And what if we all literally just impacted one person? I think we'd live in a very different world.
yeah,
What
yeah.
if we get to impact? What if we get to, this is like a huge word for me, what if we get to impact 10 people with our message? What if we get to impact 100 people with our message? What if we get to impact, like, get to write a book and impact like thousands of people?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's something that I really had to learn as well, like being kind of like in the public eye and sharing my truth. It was definitely a process. There was a lot of fear of rejection and fear of backlash and all that kind of stuff. Like I really had to work on that for quite a while, but it was so worth it. It was so worth it.
And I think if you know you're sharing your truth from your lens, from your perspective, from your heart, that it gets to help somebody else. So I have people ask me all the time, like I teach courses on, not courses, but like I lead groups through women who are like healing from infidelity. Like there's a lot of things that I talk about that aren't comfortable for people to talk about. And is it uncomfortable for some people? Like, is it uncomfortable for maybe my husband's family, or like, you know, is it uncomfortable for people? Yeah, it is. But the people that need it. So it's worth, for me, other people feeling uncomfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. I had something similar when I was kind of like coming out of the closet, when I was doing like really proper full on like psychic work and intuitive work. And that was really uncomfortable for some family members. And there was this kind of like disbelief or ridicule and that kind of stuff. And it's not always easy in that moment because it does sting, right? It does sting. But then when you're still willing to go through that and to lean into it and lean into the fears as well and move through them, there's a lot of rewarding energy beyond that. So good.
Oh my God, you just said one of my other favorite words. So like get is a favorite word, and also willing. Like when you are willing to do it, even though it's scary, even though it's hard, when you are willing to bring things to the surface to heal, even though it would be easier, you know, to shove them down. Like when you're willing, again, that's what like unlocks things. That's like the magic.
Just like I want to be able to be open to that. Just like that as a mantra can be so powerful. Like even if I still struggle to do something, sometimes I say that to myself. I really want to be able to open in that way, and that really leads the step to the actual opening, to the actual flow through. Oh, that was so amazing, Jackie. That was so inspiring and so insightful. Is there anything
I'm
that you
so
really want
happy.
to thank you. Is there anything that you really want to kind of like wrap this up with, that you really want to leave with the audience, that kind of like comes straight from your soul? What would pour out as first thing?
Yeah, so the big thing is I truly believe that we are all, like, no matter what stage you're at, constantly like one massive breakthrough away from completely transforming our life. And where that breakthrough often happens is in the place that you haven't been willing to look, the work that you haven't been willing to dive into, the healing that is like there calling on you. And my biggest thing would just be like, be willing to go there. Be willing to go there. Be willing to do the work. Be willing to do the unsexy work. Be willing to have fun. Be willing to play. That's where the breakthrough will happen. And that breakthrough will ripple into everything. And that one breakthrough is going to change your freaking life.
So amazing. I absolutely love that. And I completely sign that as well. Like, I have seen in myself as well in the past, until I was willing to go into that, leaning into fear, leaning into surrender, and leaning into the limiting beliefs. And also, from the outside, it is so common that we want to do the sparkly thing. We want to do the shiny stuff, right? We want to do, like, some people, like, especially like in the psychic communities or in the kind of like energy communities, we're like haunting or kind of like chasing this, like these amazing big experiences, right? But actually where the real transformation comes from is from that dirty work, from digging into the dirt, into the dust, and kind of like unleashing that gold that is underneath.
And what you said there too, like, you lean into the fear. Like, when you lean in and you're willing to do this work, guess what happens after you're willing to lean in? Then you get to lean back. Then you get to surrender. Then you get to tap into all this magic that we've been talking about.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It is, again, the willingness, right? Yeah, I want to do that. I want to do the unsexy stuff. And then everything
Yeah,
opens up
willingness
without
and
me having to
recognizing.
effort myself into it, but it's going to flow.
Yeah, it's the willingness and recognizing that it's like, it's always a choice. We always, always,
Mhm.
always have a choice.
Yeah. It's just like being one decision away from freedom, really. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Jaclyn. I so appreciate having had you on the podcast. So now that you've spread all of your sparkle and all of your wisdom and magic, and I know that, projectors have so much wisdom as well. And well, first of all, for sharing yours, and also for, again, being willing to go and, share these personal things also with my audience, because it is just beautiful when you're open like that and willing to go into those details as well, that a lot of people kind of like would talk around or maybe not want to go into so much. So thank you so much for being you and showing up in that way. And also, like, everyone who's been touched by your wisdom and by your magic, how can they find you? Like, what's going on? Like, what do you have on offer right now? What can they do?
Yeah, I mean, literally, I'm all over the places with For the Wild Femme and the Spiritual Smackdown podcast. And then personally, I also have Instagram, Jaclyn_Shaw, and also my Facebook is Jaclyn Shaw. So again, that's just like where I share like all of the truths. And for anyone who is wanting to dive deeper into surrender, I don't know when this is going to come out and be shared, but we are starting on February 18th. We have our Let Go course starting. That's all about letting go of expectation, control, surrender, tapping into a lot of this energy.
So good. So good. So juicy. I can't wait to hear more what you're doing, to keep following you and just, seeing you on your amazing journey. So again, thank you so much. And I'm
Thank
so
you.
excited.